Right, let's talk about what happens when a Home Secretary gets properly cross. And spoiler alert, it involves foreign nationals, the 1971 Immigration Act, and a whole lot of not on my watch energy. Welcome back to UK Secrets, where we break down the stories Westminster doesn't want you to understand. Picture this. You're a foreign national living in Britain. You've got a passport from somewhere else. You're trying to blend in. Maybe you've got a nice life happening. But then you do something spectacularly stupid. You celebrate a terror attack. You express sympathy for a proscribed organization. You post that inflammatory rubbish online. And suddenly, Shabana Mahmood is looking at you like you've just volunteered for immediate eviction. Because here's the thing nobody talks about. Deportation isn't just a threat ministers throw around for PR. It's a power that's been sitting in the statute book since 1971, waiting to be weaponized. And after the Manchester terror atrocity, it's officially being dusted off. Let's rewind to what actually happened here, because this isn't some theoretical debate at a dinner party. During an emergency parliamentary statement, and yes, that's when you know things are serious, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp asked Mahmood a very direct question. He basically said, "Look, can we please, for the love of common sense, use our powers to deport foreign nationals who express extremist views, support terrorism, or spout anti-Semitic nonsense? Not even if they've committed a crime. Mind you, just if they're waving their ideology around like a red flag at a bull." And Mahmood didn't say no. In fact, she did something more interesting. She said she was reviewing the powers, which, in politician speak, means I'm absolutely going to do this, but I need to make it sound measured right now. Here's where it gets genuinely clever, though. The 1971 Immigration Act, and this is the part Westminster would rather you didn't fully understand, allows the government to deport foreign nationals if they are deemed not conducive to the public good. Not conducive to the public good. Do you see how beautifully vague that is? It's like the legislative equivalent of a blank check. You could drive a truck through that definition. And now, post-Manchester, that truck has a very specific destination. Anyone celebrating terrorism is getting deported. No criminal conviction needed. No trial. Just a Home Secretary signing off on the fact that your presence here isn't good for the public. Wild, right? But wait, it gets better. Because Mahmood didn't just talk deportations. She went after pro-Palestine protesters too. And this is where things get deliciously controversial. She told Parliament that protests are continued before and after peace agreements in the Middle East, and therefore, and I want you to clock this logic, not all of those protesting actually want peace. It's a statement that's either genius or absolutely brutal, depending on which side of the debate you're standing. She's essentially saying, if you're still marching after a peace deal, you're not a peace activist. You're something else entirely. Now, you can argue about whether that's fair, whether it's targeting a specific community, whether it's overreach, but you cannot argue that it's not a power move. She's drawing a line, and she's saying, protest all you like, but balance it against everyone else's right to live in safety. This is where the Home Secretary essentially told Parliament that the counter-terrorism police and MI5 have actually been doing some serious legwork. Since 2017, they've foiled over 40 terror plots. 40. That's not a number you hear every day, and it's a kind of statistic that makes you realize the terrorism threat in this country isn't hypothetical. It's ongoing, it's real, and it's being tackled in the background while we all go about our lives. Mahmood said this work has saved countless lives. And then, and this is the bit that cuts to the heart of it all, she revealed that the terrorist threat Britain now faces is more complex, less predictable, and harder to detect than ever before. No hyperbole, just the cold reality that stopping terrorism has become a genuinely difficult job. Now, let's talk about the actual attack that triggered all of this. Jihad al-Shami, an extremist who somehow wasn't on MI5's radar despite being exactly the kind of person you'd think would be, went on a knife rampage outside Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. He called 999 during the attack and pledged allegiance to ISIS. This wasn't some confused individual having a bad day. This was ideological violence, planned and deliberate. 2 heroes died stopping him. Melvin Kravitz, 66, and Adrian Dolby, 53. These weren't security professionals. They were ordinary people who saw a terrorist and decided that wasn't happening on their watch. So they acted, and they paid the ultimate price. Now here's where it gets complicated, because one of those deaths, Adrian Dolby, occurred when armed police fired at Old Shamey, and the bullet passed through him. And yes, there's now an investigation. There has to be. That's not political theatre, that's procedure. But Mahmood was crystal clear in Parliament. The officers involved are being treated as witnesses, not suspects. The police believed the attacker had an explosive device. They acted in that belief. And ultimately, there's no ambiguity about who's responsible for the deaths and injuries. It was a terrorist, not the police responding to a live threat. That's not spin. That's just facts. Old Shamey, and this is actually important, wasn't some ghost who slipped through every security net. He was recently arrested on rape charges and was literally out on bail when he committed the terror attack. So he was known to the authorities. He just wasn't flagged as a terrorism risk, even though investigators now believe he was influenced by extreme Islamist ideology. That's the kind of thing that makes you wonder about intelligence gathering, doesn't it? But here's Mahmood's final message, and it's worth paying attention to. The first people hurt by Islamist extremism are often other Muslims. And it's in everyone's interest to fight it wherever it's found. That's not tribal politics. That's a Home Secretary laying down a marker that this isn't about targeting religions. This is about targeting ideology. So what's the takeaway? Shabana Mahmood has essentially declared open season on foreign nationals who celebrate terrorism or express extremist views. The 1971 Immigration Act is back in play. The threshold for deportation isn't a criminal conviction anymore. It's whether you're conducive to the public good. And in a post-Manchester Britain, that's a line that's been firmly drawn. Whether you think that's necessary security or overreach depends on where you're standing. But what's undeniable is that this is how Britain responds to terrorism in 2025, not with a new law, but by finally using the powers that have existed all along. Thanks so much for watching UK Secrets. If you want to stay on top of the stories Westminster doesn't want you to understand, hit that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next one.